'Tis I, your host Ian, on this Progmas Eve night, to bring you a tale of spectre fright. As we reflect on the year and count all our blessings, I hope you're prepared for some musical lessons. But as my guests were so full of Progmas-y cheer, it's a Progmas three-parter to round out the year. 'Twas the night after Christmas, and Ian was abed, and visions of sugar plums danced in his head, when out on his patio there arose such a clatter, so he sprang from his bed to see what was the matter. It was Ian's neighbour, a man of great station, Ebenezer Scrooge, of a business vocation. His face was unshaven, he looked really bad. You would not believe the night I just had. I was visited by spectres, but that's a whole different tale. They'll visit you for one final mission, so don't fail. I haven't heard much, but this I can surmise. I suspect most of their requests will involve a proggy surprise. But just to make sure, you should give me an example. Give me 2 songs, just a taste, just a sample. So I am here with Ebenezer Scrooge, and we are talking Progmas today. So I'm going to take you, Brian, back in time, one album before the Yes album. So their 1970 album, Time in a Word. Time in a Word was their second album, right before the addition of Steve Howe, the recording of the Yes album, and their meteoric rise to prog legends. So as you can hear from the song I'm about to give you, they had started as kind of a Beatle-ish band that was described by Bill Bruford as Simon and Garfunkel in the front and jazz in the back. And this is to say they really focused hard on the kind of intricate vocal harmonies, kind of, late 60s folk rockish, Simon and Garfunkel harmonies, and then the extreme hard jazz driving kind of rhythm section in the back of the band. So at this point, they still have Peter Banks, the original guitarist, and this album, Time in a Word, has a bunch of musical diversity. So it has the psychedelic jams, kind of power soul covers, these songs, this British invasion-y stream, but the yes-ness for me really comes in the form of Bill and Chris, and you can hear them really starting to ramp up. The great irony, of course, is that they would fire Peter Banks after this because he didn't want to move in an orchestral direction, and then they didn't move in an orchestral direction, and in fact they wouldn't touch an orchestra again until 2001. But at any rate, Steve Howe and Rick Wakeman and the crazy John lyrics and all that stuff would still yet be to come. But here we are, this song, the title track, Time in a Word, off of Time in a Word, the second Yes album. So I guess we'll start here. This is Yes before the Yes album, before the Yes as we know them, before Steve Howe and Rick Wakeman. What did you hear?
Well, first of all, Ian, happy Progmas.
Happy Progmas to you.
And happy Progmas to all. I was very happy to see the song that you've given me for Progmas this year, because in my initial listen through of all Yes, way back in the day, I think from the first 2 Yes albums, this is the only song I actually remember. This is the only one that stood out.
Woohoo! Yep, there we go.
And I would say this was an early favorite of mine, because I think this is where you see that glimpse of the classic Yes sound. Because I think you get the lyrics from John, to me, sound very Yes. Musically, I don't think they quite have it yet. And I think your observation around the orchestra is really interesting, because I'm also getting, tell me if I'm getting this wrong here, this is that wall of sound, which both the late Simon and Garfunkel, late Beatles use as well, as you pointed out, and which is maybe what I dislike about it, because to me, I don't know, that very saccharine, cheesy sound, I think it's aged very poorly, and then you've seen
Yeah.
The Beatles have like undone Let It Be, or what do they call it? Let It Be Naked or something. So I think there's been a lot of
Yeah.
like aversion to this style of music. But I do think it's a great little ditty, and I think it's a sign of things to come for Yes. But I think the Yes album, which comes after this, is a giant step up, quality, a giant step up in their sound. And I think a big part of that, obviously, is, as you pointed out earlier, that there's a shift in the lineup as well, which, without that guitar from Steve Howe, it's not quite the Yes we know and love, but it's getting there.
This still has Tony Kaye on keys and Peter Banks on guitar, and they are great for this kind of, as we said, late 60s style of music, but they're not the sonic explorers that Steve and Rick will be. Yeah, and I think that wall of sound thing, I think ties into, for me, kind of the way the song is constructed in a general sense. This is not a multi-parted song, really. This is not Close to the Edge or Tales from Topographic Oceans. And in fact, it's so simple, it's kind of weird to hear. Like, it's almost jarring because it's as if, it is John's voice, but it's such a different band. Now, he keeps the kind of basic hippie theme that I think actually gets lost later when he starts talking complete nonsense. Because these are actually like full sentences, and they are succinct concepts. And there's a time, the time is now. There's a word, the word is love. And I was like, okay, that's a thing that the Beatles could have said. It's got subject, object, verb. It's it's a pretty direct sentiment, and a pretty standard late 60s album.
Apparently, according to some interviews the band did later, this was their attempt at a anthem. I can't quite picture this. Everyone with their lighters out, singing along. You know the words in the time.
So here we go. I was going to say, I think if Yes had become a completely different band, I think this could have been on the greatest hits of the 60s, like, oh, it's Incense and Peppermints, it's Sugar Sugar, and it's Time and a Word, where it's like, oh yeah, that one band that had a kind of big hit, it was a hit in Denmark for 3 weeks or something like that, where it's like, oh yeah, that one song, because it's a very good song, like it's a very clean, easy song. I think it's just obviously about to get so overshadowed by the extremeness of their later work. And the other weird thing is later means like a year and a half from now later. That's the speed of the evolution. Yeah, talk to me about that evolution. Like, what did you hear with the guitar in this era? What do you hear that Yes has, and what do you hear that Yes is never going to have again?
Well, I think it's an absence of guitar. Without Steve Howe, it doesn't have the bite that later Yes does.
Yep.
For being a band associated with fanciful lyrics and big stage shows, I mean, people forget how hard Steve Howe can rock and how just
Oh yeah.
talented he is. I mean, I think he was Guitarist of the Year for several years in a row, and it's his absence is very noticed here.
Hmm.
And I think Yes doesn't quite know what they want to be at this point in time. I mean,
That's what I'm hearing. Yep.
to your point, if the lineup hadn't have changed, this was the lineup we got into the 70s. Would Yes just become like a Peter Frampton band? Like, would this be Yes Comes Alive? Like, that's the direction they were almost heading.
Yes, 100%. I think in the alternate Yes history, which is of course a whole cottage industry in the music press, but the whole alternate Yes history, yes, I think they would have basically become like a soft rock band. I mean, I think Bill would have left after this album, or maybe the next one. Like, I don't think Bill could have stomached actual yacht rock for that long. But I think that was the type of thing they would have done. And obviously, they all must have liked kind of jazz and stuff. I just don't think Peter Banks or Tony Kaye could roll as hard as Yes needed to roll. And, as you also kind of mentioned there, I don't think they know who they are. So this whole album is actually a really fun mixtape. But as I said at the top, it's got some soul, it's got some light psychedelia, and it's got this kind of like, late 60s anthem thing. None of it is close to the edge. None of it's orchestral in a real sense. It's just pop music with orchestra on top of it. They're not shooting for the stars just yet, and that's who we need Yes to be.
It's such a fascinating period because if you trace their discography to their relative ages, just using like John as an example, Yes, not the Yes album, 69 to Tales of Topographic Ocean, That's 4 years. So they're going from their early mid 20s to their late 20s. And they go from don't know who they are to the all time greatest to losing the plot with Tails in
Yep.
4 years.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's an extraordinary output.
No, and I was going to say, I think that goes to show it really matters who you work with. Because obviously, John and Chris will be constants throughout this whole process. But the first 6 albums that you ran through there, the original Yes debut all the way through Tales from Topographic Oceans, like I can't think of a more diverse set of albums. Any other thoughts about Time and a Word?
Last thing to mention, and this is a very me comment / observation. My favorite version of the song is from An Evening with Yes Music by Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman Howe, or ABWA. I'm a little worried, as we discovered in our recording of 90125, I call it 9125. Am I the only person that calls them ABWA? I'm a little concerned.
No. I think ABWA is their actual scientific nomenclature.
Okay. Well, at the beginning of that live concert, the concert starts with our namesake, actually, a young person's guide to the orchestra, but then it goes into John walking around the concert arena, shaking people's hands as he approaches the stage, and he combines Time
Yes.
and a Word, Owner of a Lonely Heart,
Okay.
and Teak
Oh, yeah.
Boys, which is from the ABBA album, in a way that is very charming because it's just a acoustic guitar and some very light organs as he swims through these
Yep.
3 songs. And it's such an interesting transition from proto Yes to post Yes, pop Yes, to that weird tropical song from ABBA, which has bizarre lyrics.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of
And
funny
we'll get to it, but yeah.
because especially like that whole concert, which is my all-time favorite Yes live album, it's kind of acknowledging here's the beginning, here's the end. We're not going to talk about this ever again. Let's just get to the classics, which is great. But it's kind of
Yeah.
acknowledging it. But it's very enjoyable, and what a start to the concert.
Yeah. No, I love that as a concept. And, I think it is one of those things. This isn't, if you've got 2 hours of music to get through in a Yes concert, there's other songs I'd put on the list. But for me, this era is worth a deep dive if you've enjoyed the rest of Yes. So I like what you're saying there, that live, ABWA, which was basically Yes, just said, hey, by the way, here's some cool songs we do. Anyways, back to what we need to get to tonight.
And just combine them all into like 4 minutes.
Love that.
So you just, little references. Yep. I love it.
So, the second song of your Merry Progmas. So we discussed Peter Banks leaving Yes after not wanting to attempt any orchestral music. One band that did not have this problem, however, was Emerson, Lake and Palmer. So the brief history of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, obviously they would be a supergroup. They would do their self-titled debut, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. They would do their second album, Tarkus, but they would go on to rearrange and add lyrics to Modest Mussorgsky's tone poem series, Pictures at an Exhibition. So this was a tone poem series from 1874 about his recently deceased friend's Victor Hartmann's pictures that I don't think actually were in an exhibition, but either way, they were a bunch of pictures about kind of Slavic folk things. So it's perfect prog material. There were 10 songs in the original piece, and they're threaded together with a kind of walking piece called Promenade. So these are wild paintings, as I said, based on kind of snapshots of Slavic folklore-ish or Slavic architecture. All of this to say perfect for Prague. ELP capped it off with The Nutrocker, which was an adaptation of Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite. But all of this music comes from the Romantic Classical movement, which was the kind of the classical you'll know from Disney music. So, like Fantasia will have used a lot of it. It's the music from the latter half of the 1800s. It's big. It's cinematic. It's raw emotions. Perfect for ELP. So they recorded this album, Pictures at an Exhibition, live and released it on the cheap. And wouldn't you know, it was a massive success. On the basis of this, they could then go on to do Trilogy and Brain Salad Surgery. This is kind of ELP's imperial phase. So today, I'm going to give you what I consider maybe, it's in the running for ELP's best song ever. And this, of course, is The Great Gates of Kiev. What do you feel about this song?
And I have a confession to make, and I'm worried you're gonna require me to mail in my prog rock credential card. I had never listened
Oh
to this
my god.
album until the preparation for this podcast.
Oh my god, this is me. That's me tearing up Brian's prog membership.
Yeah, I obviously listeners to this podcast can't see. We're on Zoom. Ian spat his coffee out onto the screen. He's actually cleaning it right
Yep.
now. Yeah, I don't know if I avoided is the right word or I just missed it. I knew ELP did a bunch of live albums. I had no idea this was their third album. That's pretty wild to me.
Yep.
And it's a gigantic swing as a band, even as a budget album, if you think about this is the third album they want to put out. I like it
Yep.
though. I think it's in some ways it's the worst of their indulgence, as ELP is generally regarded as the most indulgent prog rock band. But I think it actually
Oh
works
yeah.
in this way. And I've also often complained about the endless concertos and classical music adaptations of ELP. But I think when they approach it as a whole subject, as a whole concept, rather than sprinkling in these adaptations into their other albums that to me break it up in a bad way, as a full concert, as a full experience, I actually think this works.
That is a very interesting point. So I have listened to Pictures at an Exhibition, the whole album, a handful of times. And as you just touched on there, I think it is some of their most ELP-ish ELP, in so much as there's the organs, there's the synthesizers, there's Greg Lake's massive voice. Like it has a scale that I would have loved to have actually seen live, but it goes on and on and on. And, I think, by about 2 minutes, you're like, actually, my cortisol levels actually can't take this much longer. Like, this is too intense. I would have loved to have seen this live, for sure. And you are right that maybe not mixing it up, to have the sheriff or something in and amongst this would put a spotlight on how extreme this kind of project is, and you'd be like, oh, I actually kind of just want to hang out with the sheriff. Like, I kind of just want a nice song. I think this song in particular, The Great Gates of Kiev, works because it is massive and it's nothing else. And as we've said about ELP before, it starts at a 9 and goes up to like a 13 and doesn't ever come down, really. You can handle 4 minutes of that. Like, the human body is only capable of handling 4 minutes of that. But it is interesting that you say that this works maybe better as a whole album. And it is a wild swing.
Well, imagine if I told you for their, second or third album, LMFAO was going to do a adaptation of Holst's The Planets and write their own lyrics where lyrics previously didn't exist. Like, to me, that's as crazy.
Yep. To that point, I'd be like, I'm curious enough that I'd have to listen. And if we were in the era of like buying bargain bin vinyls, I'd be like, you know what? I've got to play with this tooth. Like, I have to know. So maybe that does like a morbid curiosity of like, are they really going to do this? Are they really going to swing for the hills? Also, LMFAO, please. Brian's just given you your next album. Come back after 14 years or whatever to party rock us with The Planet Suite.
Well, they're big fans of the podcast, so I know they're listening right now.
Sky Blue, Red Foo. We're here if you ever need us.
Yeah.
So actually, speaking of lyrics, what did you take to these lyrics? So my personal thing is, for me, they're Greg Lake's standard lyrics in so much as they are rhyming couplets, feel like they should be deep. They have nothing whatsoever to do with Kiev or Great Gates of any real sense.
Am I a child, an immature, or are these lyrics incredibly horny?
Uh-oh.
I mean, come forth from love's spire, stirring in salty streams. Am I hearing something that's not there?
No, because as one of King Crimson's girlfriends famously said, Greg Lake was a walking penis. And I was like, I think, the man became his art. And in a sense, I think that, like, Greg Lake is I don't know, thrusting spiritually. I don't know what the word is.
Come forth from love's spire, in the burning, all our yearning. That sounds like it was ripped from a romance book.
Yeah, why not? like Grig Lake works on that level. Like,
I hope this is a true Rule 34 where me just mentioning this will make it become reality. If there isn't erotic fan fiction for ELP, there should be.
helloprogfrog@gmail.com. Send us what you got. Brian gives you a guarantee he will do a reading to music. But, okay. Getting back on track in a Progmasy mood. Emerson's arrangement. Talk to me about Keith Emerson.
As we've often talked about on this podcast, the idea of huge crowds, sold out arenas, going wild for this type of music. As soon as the first half of the song comes to a close, we get into the strange organ feedback section. And as soon as that happens, you can hear the crowd roar in excitement. And I was really trying to think about this because it's such an obnoxious sound. What he was doing, and I watched videos of this, is he's literally picking up the organ. This is a large wooden organ, and just seemingly randomly just like dragging around on stage, picking up and dropping it. And Ian, maybe you can explain as a real musician, I know he's producing feedback, but is he doing it in any constructive way, or is it just random?
I mean, for me, I think it's completely random in so much as I think, when Jimi Hendrix would sit in front of the amp and just go with the guitar and stuff. I think it's like, what can you do to maximally make some noise? I don't think there's any method or madness. If anyone out there is a music concrete composer, feel free to correct us. But on the flip side to all of this, it goes to show how incredible of a live band they are, that they whipped this out in no joke. I mean, from their debut to Tarkus to this is only a year and a half. Doing the math there, it means they prepared this stage show in the order of like a few months. And it sounds very well realized, like it sounds like a mature piece, even if I find a lot of it to be grating.
I think they would have been cowardly to edit anything. For all my problems with the LP, they're not cowards.
Yeah.
Every impulse they have, you're hearing.
Yep. That's also been my greatest defense of ELP is I love that they swung for the hills every single time.
There's a quote I really love from Roger Ebert about the filmmaker Werner Herzog, which is, he has never created a single film that is compromised, shameful, made for pragmatic reasons, or uninteresting. Even his failures are spectacular.
Yep. So ELP at this era still swinging for the fences, and in this song, Great Gates of Kiev, hitting it out of the park. Anyways, that's all I got for you, Brian Easer. So I'm going to continue on this dark and stormy Progmas night.
Well, thank you, Ian, and Merry Progmas to you.
And Merry Progmas, and Prog bless us, everyone. Rufus Marley did in fact visit later that eve, covered in chains of covetous greed. I'm stuck with these chains, he said with a pout. Every time they move, they shake so damn loud. He exclaimed with some hope, what I need is a song, preferably one with prominent drums so I could rock along. So here I am with Rufus Marley, weighed down by all of his prog-related crimes. A Merry Progmas to you, Rufus.
Hiya, nice to be on. Merry Progmas, Merry Progmas.
So we start our Progmas story back in 1963, where a young Mannfred Mann has just arrived from South Africa into the swinging London. Not quite swinging, actually, we're still in the early 60s. But he would start the Mannfred Mann Band and would find success with the bubblegum pop song Do-Wah Diddy, brackets, Diddy-Dum Diddy-Do.
Rolls off the tongue.
Rolls right off the tongue. They would go on to have some more minor success with The Mighty Quinn and Pretty Flamingo, but they'd never quite be able to recapture the initial success of Do-Wah Diddy. So, in 1970, Mannfred Mann would wrap up the band and start the Jazz Fusion Band, Chapter 3. But, wanting to get back to his commercial life, he would form the Mannfred Mann Earth Band in 1971, which takes us up to this album, 1976's The Roaring Silence, and of course the song is the hit single off of it, Blinded by the Light. So, this be my gift to thee.
What a wonderful gift it was.
So yes, what were your first thoughts on this song?
I mean, I loved it. I didn't actually know the Bruce Springsteen song from before, so the fact that it was a cover was kind of lost on me. But yeah, really enjoyable to listen to. It's one of those long songs that feels fresh throughout. So, I think you put down the note that it just kind of flies by when you're listening to it, and I completely agree.
So let's take it all the way back to the Bruce Springsteen song. So the original Bruce Springsteen song, Blinded by the Light, is actually, by his own admission, just him with a rhyming dictionary saying go-kart, Mozart, upshot, earshot. And actually, it reminds me of the joke about Bob Dylan's lyrics, as made famous by the Dewey Cox story, Walk Hard. The scene where he's going, oh, laundromat, stupid cat, that type of thing. And the guy's like, oh, this is so deep. To his credit, Bruce Springsteen is saying this is all dumb. But yeah, it's got the ring of that kind of ridiculous verbiage.
What a fucking film. I need to go and watch this. This is going to be like my Christmas film or something, because I didn't know that existed. And that clip is just pure genius. I love it.
And I mean, and it is. But in its own way, I actually feel like the song kind of feels rich and deep because of that. And in fact, it's almost got like an both Americana thing, where obviously there's the calliope, there's kind of a feeling that you're at like, I guess Bruce Springsteen, like an Atlantic City seaside fair kind of attraction thing. But also it's kind of got the Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds thing, just cool snapshots of stuff kind of rolling by.
A collection of colourful words. So yeah, I think this version feels so much fuller. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot more intricacy. And in many ways, it reminds me of like a remix rather than a cover. I mean, obviously, it isn't literally a remix, but it has so much kind of added to it that I think it has its own value, basically, as a song.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's roughly in the same order, but I guess let's get into it now. The song structure of this song, obviously, there's the Blinded by the Light part, and it's kind of a verse and a chorus. And then we roll off into the solo, and then we come back out to the chopsticks, and then we end on Blinded by the Light. But let's get into the solo, because, what a solo.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the other members of this band in a bit. The guitarist for this, Dave Flett.
Yeah.
What a solo.
Oh, boy. What a solo. I think why I liked it so much is that guitar solos are so often front and center, right? But the effects that they chose for the solo, I think, make it spacey enough to fit the general feel of the song, but also for the guitar solo to blend in really nicely into the backing. And like another feeling or thought I had about it, which was why I enjoyed it, was this kind of opening up of the drums as the solo comes to a close. And that's something that's really common in live music renditions of songs. And so if you're doing that on a recording, it actually adds this live element, live feel to the song, which I think is really nice. And, when you add that to the spacey effects, the large reverb on the vocals, it makes you kind of feel like you're in the room with them rather than just listening to a recording. And I think that's always a really pleasant listening experience when that's kind of produced, when it's produced in that way.
And actually, yeah, riffing on that, the song feels so organic, for the fact that it's essentially like an 8-minute long orchestral pop piece.
Yeah.
Even the verses flip back and forth between not so much tempos, but like feels almost, rhythmic feels. And even that feels organic.
Which is quite sort of an antithesis of the chopsticks part, right? Which is, to me, was very jarring.
I mean, so we come out of the solo into chopsticks. The do 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 do. And I don't think it's actually sonically that jarring. Like, they play it, within the context of the song. Like, it's not orchestrated any different or anything like that. I think the only bit that's jarring is that it's a song we already know. Yeah, and then you kind of ride out into Blinded by the Light again and finish out the song. So coming to the band now, I think this is one of those instances where every member of the band is taking care of that business.
Taking it home, yeah.
So we start with the vocalist, Chris Hamlet Thompson. And man, just like, what a talent. I don't think he did much else besides this band, but like,
yeah,
he just has such power.
It's I think what I really appreciated was his kind of bluesy English husk that sometimes you hear in music of this time, and he really carries that, and I think in turn that carries the song quite well. So really, really, really nice to hear.
Yeah, and I think his voice kind of has that projected live power. Obviously, this is not a live song, but, kind of you can imagine this being in the stadium. We're in that era now of classic rock stadium anthem era.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of this kind of later 70s soundscape comes from Mannfred Mann himself, who obviously plays the keyboards and such. But I think obviously did such a great job of orchestrating all of this.
Yeah, the production, both I think I was hugely impressed by. I guess kind of going back to my previous point, like I just think the live feel that they brought to the song really does it justice. And I think, maybe when you are playing, or when you have got a recording of a 9 minute or 7 minutes or whatever, you need that feel to keep the listener engaged, because I think a lot of the time when you play a live rendition of a song, there's a lot more, I don't know, play with the audience, a lot more intricacy that is perhaps lost in recordings, and they kind of bring that to a recording, which is, it certainly helped me as a listener engage with it. So yeah, hugely impressed, and I thought it all sounded really nice. Yeah,
and kind of even in the same style as like ELO or whatever, where there's all these little details, and you can just keep coming back to the song, and hearing another thing each time.
Yes, that ear candy.
So that brings us to the other members of the band. So we'll come back here to Dave Flett, the guitarist for this song. And that actually brings up another thing he was so good at on this song. So, we've talked about a solo, there's a bit of wah, there's a bit of reverb, but it's very tastefully done. And the thing he does so well is his guitar licks have the same sonic quality as the rest of the guitar in the song.
That's beautiful.
So when the solo actually comes, it doesn't feel like it's been parachuted in. It just feels like part of the song.
Okay, yeah.
And then we come to Chris Pattinson on bass. Yeah, this bass performance really it adds to that feeling of like you could just listen to this again and again. There's like, again, more details.
Yeah, so my feelings on this was, like, I thought the bass riff was really quite involved, which I thought was pretty cool. It's always nice to have a bass player not just play pure root notes and actually have some additional kind of trills and fills in there, and it keeps the track going. It gives that sense of movement. I think again, with like longer songs, you really want that feeling of progression of movement.
Yeah, and then finally we come to the drum performance of Chris Slade on the drums, and again he is taking care of business, and this is one of the most interesting drum performances all the way through. He does a little bit of something interesting each kind of go round with the verse and the chorus and stuff.
In terms of stuff he does, I think what I really appreciated was how bass drum heavy he is in his groove. I think that was quite interesting for the time. This isn't really something that you hear a lot of in the 70s, and it helps. Usually when you have a bass player that's very busy, you don't necessarily have a busy bass drum because there's so much overlapping in the frequencies. It can get quite muddled and confusing to the listener. But if you are good enough to be able to hit on beat when your bass player is also playing and you are at that same speed, it just kind of emphasizes the whole thing. It brings that movement even more, and it really kind of enables the song. So I agree. I think his playing's really, really good. I especially think his playing during the solo is like of note, because he's doing that thing where I've kind of spoken about it before, where you're reducing your playing so that you give space to other players to do their thing, but he's keeping the momentum, and then he's also closing the solo, and those two things that are really difficult to do, and he does them very, very well. Yeah.
And actually, I think it's his naturalness and adaptability to each kind of part of the song that holds it together. What could have been quite a fraying song, what could have sounded like kind of a scattershot song, really, as we said, holds together as an organic 8-minute jam, as an organic 8-minute composition, an odyssey.
Yeah, absolutely. Inevitably, he needs to bring them back in, right? That's he's in so many words. He's telling the guitar player to shut up and get back to the chorus. So,
and I think, yeah. And I think what you allude to there is that feel for a dynamic. When do I step forward? When do I step back?
I think all the playing is fantastic. I think maybe my feelings around the keyboard playing was that it wasn't as special as the other parts, but I still think that every single part itself was fantastic and put together via the production made a really great song, and certainly one that's going on the playlist. So yeah, no, this was a Christmas treat.
A Christmas treat indeed. And actually, I'll throw one final thing out there. I'd never actually listened to the full album, The Roaring Silence, but in preparation for this podcast, I'd give it quite a few listens, and wow, it's really good. So I exhort all of you at home, do yourself a Christmas favor, a Progmas favor, and listen to A Roaring Silence. And actually, it kind of stands to reason, because this wasn't like a performance where, one character kind of overpowers all the rest. It was like 5 really talented people playing some good mid-70s music, so yeah, that's what the album is. So, you mentioned that Manfred Mann's drummer Chris Slade played a very tasteful and dynamic drum part. A band who definitely did not have that problem was The Who. So The Who had some success in the early mid-60s with My Generation, a staple classic mod song, and followed it up with a quick one, which was a 9-minute suite. And they would go on to produce The Who Sell Out, which was kind of a jokey, comic-y, concept-y album about commercialism. So 1968 rolls around, and they need another hit to get back into the charts, get back on track. And luckily for them, their producer/manager, Kit Lambert, says, guys, just go big. So fortuitously for them, their guitarist/primary songwriter, Pete Townsend, was cooking up a rock opera about a deaf, dumb, and blind kid named Tommy Walker. He goes on to be a pinball wizard and become a messiah, but this all resulted in the famous first rock opera of all time, Tommy. You'll probably know the biggest hit off of this album, Pinball Wizard. However, the song I bequeath to you is Amazing Journey. So this is the second real song off of Tommy. It's probably the most overtly psychedelic song, and especially if you're more used to the classic rock phase of The Who, which is just around the river bend from this, it's kind of fun to go back to this. They're leaving the psychedelic wilderness. And in fact, they didn't really go psychedelic that much. They were more of a mod band, but here we are. What did you think of The Amazing Journey?
It's pure chaos, isn't it? I love it. It's I've seen the film. I saw the film quite young, actually, and obviously heard the album in its entirety. But I think this song in particular is an absolute fever dream.
Fever dream.
I love how they had the opportunity to do this. I kind of guess how I can kind of see how it happened, but I also think that if this is a Hail Mary, then they must have had a real difficult time explaining to the music execs how this was going to put them back up into the charts. Hey, here's this absolutely nuts, concept album that we're going to make solely around this Messiah child. But yeah, to the song particularly, I love what it's trying to infer. I think the song's catchy and enjoyable to listen to, and they're definitely going for this. Yes, they're bringing the trip, if you get what I mean. Then, yeah. Yeah,
so this album in general is Pete working through his feelings about the 1967 the hangover of the Summer of Love. So he'd gone off to study under the tutelage of Meher Baba, made famous later by Baba O'Reilly. And I think he was feeling a bit, disillusioned or confused about the world of the 1960s.
I can't read it either. It's too deep for me. I understand it's here's this child of desperate circumstances becoming a god or whatever, or becoming capable of something. But how that is relevant to himself, it's beyond me.
So the album in a general sense kind of follows the 2 tracks of Tommy Walker has been forced to become deaf, dumb, and blind to ignore the murder of his dad by the lover of his mom. But basically, he then awakens to his inner senses, which is what this song is, and then, with that power, I guess, goes on to become a pinball wizard, and then later, a messiah.
Yeah.
But I think the musical thing going on here is this song specifically is the last time The Who will sound 1960s. And of course, there's a bit of, backwards guitar or whatever, but they're The Who, and they can't help it. And I think besides Roger Daltrey sounding a little bit ethereal, man, they just rock. It's still 110% of a song. I mean, the song is just massive. Like, drums, bass, it's a huge song.
They bring their pizzazz, their who pizzazz. Does that make sense? They bring they bring their technicality to what is otherwise.
And of course, by technicality, you meant they just unlatched the lock on Keith Moon's cage and just let him out.
Oh yeah. That's the best bit.
I mean, the raw energy. And I guess it was kind of what was so funny is like, oh, here's a gentle acoustic psychedelic ballad. And then the drums are just so forward. They just erupt into the song.
Maybe he wouldn't have it any other way. Maybe he's like, right, he'd be in the production room or whatever. Like, let me have a listen.
Yeah, what you need here is just more tom fills.
Yeah, he just needs... Oh, God. Wait, what if I have a tom fill here, and here, and here? Perfect.
One final little bit about Tommy, just because I love this bit of lore. So the reason he plays pinball is just because there's this one music critic, Nick Cohn, and Pete Townsend really wanted a good review, and the guy loved pinball, so Pete's just like, you know what Tommy's going to be good at? He's going to be good at pinball.
That's really interesting, actually, isn't it?
And there was some quote somewhere of Nick just saying, I'm so annoyed that it worked, but yeah, it worked.
Oh, man.
So, yes, there you go. So someday, perhaps we'll do the full album, but for now, that was The Who's Amazing Journey. Do you have any final thoughts?
Unhinged as fuck, but it's brilliant.
And with that, we will continue on our Progmas Night's journey. Fare thee well, Rufus.
Thank you for having me.